A very warm welcome to you all. Welcome to Designing Cities for All.
The two-year activity program of Pakhuis de Zwijger,
in which we take a deep dive into designing products,
places and systems for all.
At every level, we can see certain communities being marginalized, being taken advantage of, and it's all part of the design.
When you're neurodiverse, you're in a world that isn't designed for you.
We're not the only species on the planet. The city needs to be also a city for the other species.
And we need to do something because the old structures in which we worked don't work.
Things won't change just if we just let things happen.
Instead of saying, what can we do to mitigate the impacts? We need to start asking ourselves, what is causing that?
Design is political, that we need to design processes, that we are all different, but there are things that unite us.
These are the things that need to be on the table, that need to be recovered in order to redesign the society.
Everything around us was once designed and can therefore be redesigned.
How do we teach design in a way where students can be really critical of the systems of power that have informed and dominated design?
Inclusion happens by design or not at all.
I think it's always some kind of a co-creation process, and you have to make very little steps and then figure out together what works and what doesn't.
it takes as much time to do something good as it takes time to do something bad.
All design tells a story.
But there's also a bit of a need to not just write ourselves into the past, but also kind of write ourselves into the future.
I invite you so much to join my path of liberation, and I'm hopefully being welcomed by your path of liberation.
We have to heal collectively. We have to help each other understand some of these constructs that actually divide us.
Not fitting in was a blessing, or I would have turned out just like you.
Also intimate like this. I have enough of a loud voice to do it. But okay, no, we have audio also. Hi everyone, welcome to this Designing Cities for All specials called Belonging Abroad. And we just saw the trailer for Designing Cities for All, which is a program from Pakhuis de Zwijger about designing systems, products, and cities for all, to be inclusive. And tonight we have a very special program. We're going to talk about something very relevant, very a topic that's still moving, and that's the international students that live in the Netherlands and how they achieve belonging in a foreign country, really. And for that, we're going to talk to different speakers that have some kind of expertise in this. The screen says that my name is Luis Anibal Villegas. I will tell you that's how you pronounce it. So if you pronounce it incorrectly, I will be like, So, yeah, tonight we're going to have a very interesting program. And I would like to first give an introduction about the topic. You know, we are here as international students. I'm an international student myself. And to be able to feel belonging somewhere where you are not raised or where you don't grow up, it's something very important, especially because people then study for a longer period of time. A lot of people that decide to stay also in the Netherlands, and how they form their communities, how they form their belonging in a country like this is sometimes a long process. And for that reason is why we're going to talk to different speakers. On my left, I would say, for you the right, for me the left, we have Sophia Dittmar. Sophia is a student herself, and you are also part of the Erasmus Student Network. We have other speakers. Dejan Bislik is also here with us. He is from the Compass for Students Foundation, which helps students from Aruba and the Dutch Caribbean to establish themselves here and to find their starting point for their studies here in the Netherlands. We have other speakers that are joining us through online, through Zoom or whatever the programs are called. And yeah, so those I will introduce also. We also have Megan Ormond. She is joining us. I think I can see her. I don't know if you guys can see her. Let's put her on the screen, please. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Oh, nice. Thanks. There she is. And she is a professor of migration, of belonging. She studies these programs at onder andere Wageningen University. And we also have Sung Jung Kim, if I say her name correctly. But we will hear more about them as we go on. First, I'd like to start with you, Sophia. Tell us, how did you first join the Erasmus Student Network, which you're part of the committee for?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Sophia. So I moved to the Netherlands 4.5 years ago as a student to study psychology in Laden. And I think as international students, it can be quite scary to move to a new country. You don't really know anyone. So of course I was looking for ways for how do I build my own community? How do I find my home away from home? And during the International Orientation Week, I heard about ESN, which stands for Erasmus Student Network, which basically started out over 30 years ago in Utrecht, taking care of Erasmus students. And by now they're also taking care of international students, but also all internationally minded students. So that includes Dutch students as well. So I heard about them, I applied for a committee. I've been stuck ever since. I have not left. I went on in committees for 2 more years. I did a board year. I was the president of ESN Leiden for 1 year. And now I'm helping out the national board. So I'm board support for ESN the Netherlands.
Nice, very interesting. How did you, because you said you joined because you were looking kind of like for this, oh, where can I go as a student? Like you said, a lot of times it's very scary to find that belonging really at the Erasmus Student Network. And how do you try to create that now with the work that you do with the Erasmus Student Network?
I think it's just, I try to make everyone feel welcome. And that was my goal while being on the board, was because it was during COVID. We were the first COVID board. So it was really just, people are coming to a new country. There's restrictions. It's very hard to meet new people. So for me, my mission has always been making everyone feel welcome, making everyone feel heard, and just building a home away from home. Because I think a lot of international students can recognize that we all come together. It is a community. And it's very much, for me in my first week when I wasn't doing well, other people would understand, and you had 10 people in front of your doorsteps trying to cook you food, trying to make sure you're okay. And 4 years later, that's still the case. So, and I'm trying to make that possible for other students as well, coming to ESN for that.
Nice. Wow, that's very nice. And how was your own personal journey as a student also do you feel like you belong in the Netherlands? How does that topic attach itself to your personal journey, let's say here?
I think my first 3 years, I very much felt like I belonged because I was in an international bubble. And now I worked for a year last year, and now with my master's, where you're interacting with more Dutch students that are maybe not as open to internationals as my own friend group is, you do realize there is maybe more of a divide and separation. And I never felt the need to learn Dutch until now. And I feel like if I want to stay here and actually want to be part of the Netherlands, I do have to maybe also try a little bit harder. But it's still like there's a couple of barriers that I'm now meeting in this past year.
That's interesting because maybe the language could be one of those barriers. And what else have you experienced? I can call upon, for example, people see ads sometimes, they say on to get rooms on Kamernet, on these kinds of websites, and sometimes they say no internationals, or they explicitly don't want a certain people. Is this something you see as well, and what other barriers do you see then?
I think talking about no internationals, there's also a reason why I went into ESN. I actually first was looking at a different association, which was the Study Association for Psychology in Leiden. And in my first year, they weren't accepting any internationals, which I thought was really weird if you have a Dutch and international track. why do you not want internationals? Why do you not want their opinion? Why do you not want their input? I think by now it has changed in the past 4 years. I know that more internationals are included in committees now, but that was my barrier why I maybe moved more towards the international community in the beginning instead of the Dutch community when I came.
Do you think, I mean, I'm not sure if you found out then why it was, then this barrier was there, but what do you think, if you could hypothesize? What?
I think from what I've heard is it's more comfortable to speak Dutch.
Yeah, I can imagine. Then you don't have to translate in your head, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. No, interesting. Wow, we're already going in the depths of this topic. But I would like to introduce also our next speaker, which is on Zoom. And I just introduced her actually, but we're going to go more deep. Yeah, so Megan Ormond, and you are a researcher, a professor that has a lot of things to say about this topic, I feel. We could have you on for quite a long time. But of course, we want to balance as well the student perspective and the research as well. Could you share with us some of the projects you've worked on in the past few years relating to the topic of belonging and international students, migration?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this evening. I've been involved, I'm a cultural geographer by training, and I do a lot of work that engages with participatory action research. And I work a lot together with colleagues from outside of academia in a transdisciplinary manner. So I'm working with artists, with social entrepreneurs, with social workers, with NGOs, both within the Netherlands and beyond. And the kind of work that I do focuses on supporting the recognition of people with migration backgrounds as being locals and having the authority to speak about the places in which they live. So an example of this would be the Roots Guide, which was launched at the mid last year. And it's an alternative travel guidebook of the Netherlands as seen through the eyes of people with refugee and migration backgrounds. The intention there is to use these lenses as a way to better get to know the places in which we live, whether we have lived here all of our lives or we've lived here a short time. And that's the intention of the book. So it's to really, it's not just to provide a set of stories to make you feel something, but a way to actually get you to engage and to experience the world around you differently. That's the intention behind that project. And another project is Migrantour Utrecht specifically. Migrantour is a network of more than 20 cities throughout Europe that offers guided walking tours that are co-created and led by people with refugee and migration backgrounds, both first and second generation. We, in the last year, we were able, through European Union funding, able to bring Migrantour to the Netherlands to establish its first tour in Utrecht, in the Lombok neighborhood, some of you might be familiar with. And we're very, very proud of this work that we do because we're able to reach people in ways that we wouldn't be able to otherwise, through academic papers or that kind of thing, but really engaging people who like to travel, who are curious not just about places across the planet, but also the places in which they live.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, very interesting. You're part of this research project, or let's say, how do you say that? Afdeling, a department. Yes, thank you very much. That focuses on unusual collaborations, and I would say this is quite not unusual in the sense of that it's not that it's weird or something. It's just not what academia would usually do. How do you see that then, the academic and how they can involve themselves more with these kinds of issues in the community?
I think fortunately there's a push within the Netherlands over these last few years to move away a bit from the publish or perish paradigm and more to go public or perish, right? So this idea that we need to really start to engage with the society in much deeper ways, and to engage in research that's not extractive, but is actually productive, is transformative, is supportive. And that's been one of the joys of being able to do the work that I do, is to work together with NGOs, for example, that are supporting, for example, international students and people who are newcomers in the Netherlands to be able to really find home, regardless of that, maybe being very far away from where they grew up.
Yes, no, definitely. That's I think it's a very important thing for there to be more involvement from these institutions, which at the end of the day, we're all part of the institutions as well as international students. So I would like to go next to Deon Bislik, which is from Compass for Students Foundation. And yeah, it's quite interesting. We met some time ago in Aruba. I'm also from Aruba. And I always wondered, how did you guys start this idea for this foundation? Your own experiences with the student, I imagine, must have informed this. Tell us more about it.
Hi, my name is Dion Mislik, and indeed I'm the co-founder and director of Stichting Compass for Students. And to answer that very shortly, when I arrived at Schiphol, I was supposed to get picked up, but nobody came to pick me up. And I didn't have a phone. I had 800 euros in my pocket. This is not that situation, by the way. That's the other co-founder of Compass, Viviana Lopez Plas, just adding. But I just stood there. I didn't have any family members to come pick me up. I didn't have any contacts, basically. So I think it was about 6 to 7 hours that I was just aimlessly walking around, not knowing what I'm going to do next, thinking about maybe, I don't know, sleeping on the street, changing my passport, but how do I do that? Luckily, a friend of mine showed up at Schiphol. That time you had 2 flights from Aruba, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and that friend thought that in the afternoon I would arrive and that she would then surprise me as a welcome. So I saw her, coincidentally, because I was walking around. And immediately I told her, "Hi, can I please stay at your place? I need somewhere to stay. I don't know what to do." So that was my first day. And it's been an uphill battle from that point on. I didn't know how to cook. The next day I had to make a scrambled egg because that friend is not going to make breakfast for me, that's for sure. So I had to make a scrambled egg. I burnt it. Yeah, it's not gonna leave my memory. Yeah, it's burnt in my memory. Also,
you learn quick.
Yeah, you kind of have to. So yeah, it was an uphill battle from that point on, and then I think about 5 years later, a couple of cousins of mine came to the Netherlands also, and they also experienced not my hardships, but still difficulties. So I
Similar
started
things.
exactly. So I started asking around what kind of help there were for Caribbean students or Dutch Caribbean students, and there were not many. A lot of fingers were being pointed to the government, to the Aruba government. So I decided, yeah, that's not gonna do anything because we know governments move very slowly and surely. Let's put it like that. So I decided, no, I need quick action, small steps, big impact, and I was finishing my business management studies, had to come up with a project, and we decided then we're gonna try to help the students by workshops that we designed using experience design and design thinking methods and tools, so that we can then prepare the students as best as possible before they come to the Netherlands and embark in their journey of life. So then we established ourselves in 2018 as a foundation, and
That's a while ago. Wow.
yes.
15 years then. Wow.
Yeah, it's 2018. Yeah, 5-6 years. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I
5-6. Yeah. About yes. COVID happened during that time also, and we were only giving the workshops in 1 week of the year, in June mostly or July. So no company would give you as a worker vacation in high season. So I would just quit my job. I would just quit my job, go to Aruba, give the workshops, come back, and yeah, that's how it kind of started. Yeah.
Wow. And since then, you've been giving these workshops, as I understand it, in Aruba, but also here in the Netherlands. So both before the students come, but also after they're kind of finding their footing here.
Yes.
You give both.
Yes.
Both the pre and the post and of them moving.
Yes, exactly. So in Aruba, we teach the students how to live sustainably and how to like hit the ground running, kind of, in the Netherlands. And here we just do a checkup. So it's like it's a bittersweet experience because not many students really show up when we do it here in the Netherlands. But we take that as a really awesome sign because that
Did your
means
job.
exactly. We have contact with the students, so we know they're doing okay. If they need any mental health support, we know where to guide them. But in the meantime, you got stuff to do in life, and we're here to support you. And if you have the tools necessary, you can make it, right? So, yeah, silence is also powerful sometimes.
Yes, no, very, very interesting. We're gonna go very, very deep on this topic. But first, we also have to introduce our next speaker, which is Seungju Kim, and she is also an international student who lived most of her life in Malaysia and now also in the Netherlands. She has a podcast titled Voiced Vulnerabilities. Um, and yes, I would like to invite you to tell us more about your journey and why you started this podcast as well.
All right, so just for clarification, I'm actually not in the Netherlands right now. I did my studies partially in the Netherlands, but currently I'm in my UK to continue my studies. But yeah, I'm actually originally from Korea, but I grew up most of my time in Malaysia and English-speaking communities. So it's like quite layer after layer after layer, because whenever someone asks me where you're from, like, do I say Malaysia or do I say like I was part of an American community? Do I say Korea? So it's just a lot of clashing of cultural identities that I've had ever since growing up. But I moved to the Netherlands when I was 17 years old, and that was 2019. And I didn't know anyone in the Netherlands. I was just there alone. And it was just an immediate jump from, having a community and seeing the same people every single day to going to a place that I didn't know about. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know the culture, and also having to be independent right away. But I would say there are some of like the cultural differences that I saw, and Malaysia is very much a collectivist community. So we like to take care of each other. We like to share a lot of things together. We do a lot of things together. And I'm not saying that people here, like people in the Netherlands, don't take care of each other. It's just it looks different, because I wouldn't really see people going to like their neighbor's house like every week or like every so often just to share the food that they made. It's very like spontaneous, but there wasn't much of that in the Netherlands. And I would say, in conjunction to that, another huge difference that I felt, cultural shock, I guess, was the scheduling. I knew that the Dutch people really like to schedule in things. So even with my closest friends, it was so hard to even book like a day in a week to meet up, because everyone had such their own like individual lives, because it's very individualistic in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, or dare to say just Western Europe.
Yes.
So everyone had their own schedules. It was so hard to meet up, and I think a lot of that came with like the loneliness of not having a frequent community or a frequent friend group to be with. So yeah, those are kind of several things that I would like have to highlight it about what was different from Malaysia and the Netherlands.
How was it for you to how did you deal with this individualistic society? How were you able to still find some kind of belonging or create moments where you do feel, hey, I have friends, I can reach out. How was that for you?
Right. So I think it took a lot of initiative. So, I mean, I went to UFA, and Amsterdam is such a huge place. There's so many people, a lot of students. So even if I meet someone on campus, I don't know if I'll see them anytime soon. So I was very direct and forward. If I had a conversation and I felt like I wanted to hang out and get to know them, I'll just get their contacts, their socials. So that was one way. And I would say another way was just to be really patient. I would say like even my first semester, I only had one friend like throughout the whole semester. But I also knew that, you know, with more like valued connections and more, I would say, deep connections, it takes time. So yeah, it took a lot of patience and just a lot of like building up from like, you know, the first time you meet and then, you know, you hang out, go to a cafe, have a nice talk and try to like initiate. I think that was the way that I was able to kind of break through that barrier.
Yeah, no, definitely. You have to be very patient, especially in a new place. How are you going to build relationships with others? It will take time. The relationships you've made probably in wherever you came from also took time. So it would be different. It would be very strange to expect that the friendships just go like, you know, click click like that. No, that's a very interesting insight. Thank you. So now we can start talking about going in depth and kind of debating almost with each other. Of course, I do have to highlight that there are so many perspectives possible in this talk, and of course we only have a certain amount of perspectives here, so this does not invalidate in any way other perspectives. But yeah, I would first like to just open the floor for you guys to react, Deon and Sophia, to this aspect of the slowness. How do you build this belonging, relationships, and not rushing through it? How do you find your footing in not rushing through it in a way? The community.
I think you get very good at being alone and like just enjoying time with yourself, because now also just listening, I was thinking back to my first semester and I also only had one friend. That was, I think, my first semester, because it's also dark, right? It's winter, you don't really go out. And since then, yeah, I think it's patience, like what was already mentioned, just being patient, being okay with being alone, and being brave enough to go up to people you enjoy talking to and be like, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? Do you want to continue this conversation? I think by now I've built a pretty good, like I've said that before, but I have built up my own family here, which I think is very much needed, being so far away from your family.
Yeah.
But it took a while. Just, it's effort.
I was really listening to the, like, you know, I want to double up on the patience part, because a lot of what has to do with finding friends and people you hang out with is, I think, simplified, people you like. So like it takes a lot of patience to find yourself, right? Depending on where you come from and how your environment was, it can develop or underdevelop the personality of the student that are coming here, and here then they have to hit the ground running almost to be able to then find themselves and then know why they like certain people and be friends with them. And not only I have to have Dutch friends, I have to have expat friends, but I can be with people I like and also keep growing, right? And that's a lot that's happening actually in a small amount of time, and you know that it takes a lot of effort and confidence, you know, to be able to step out and to be able to ask someone, hey, can we go see a movie, get that rejection, and still try. Takes it's admirable of anyone that is able to make a friend, specifically now here in the Netherlands.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I also want to go on the aspect that you mentioned of the patience, but also the way to. Sorry, could you repeat that part? The one about that you mentioned that it's not something that you can build up immediately, but before that.
You mean that it depends where you come from,
exactly,
as an environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're also building your own understanding of who you want to be, or who around what kind of people you want to be.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
I want to also get your thoughts, Megan, about this. It's very interesting how maybe from your research we could see how this process of your own discovery, your own building your own identity also is interweaved with this community finding and building aspect.
Yeah. I was thinking about when I was preparing for this evening, I was thinking about my own experience as an international student. I'd studied in lots of different countries before I ended up here in the Netherlands as an associate professor. And I think, part of the joy and of course the great pain of being an international student is precisely that you have to, you're far away from things. You're far away from everything that you know. From everything that feels comfortable, and I think part of it's about embracing that. You mentioned this notion of just being okay with being alone, but yeah, figuring out what it is that you really like, figuring out also kind of navigating the landscape of the different kinds of organizations that are available to support you. Or the kinds of interests that you've got. It's a moment for reinvention, for exploration, for developing independence, and that's not easy. It's not, and I think that's just part of that transformation that you have to go through when you go abroad.
How, if I can ask a question, how would you say that you're experiencing the institutions catering to this student journey?
Institutions in the Netherlands.
Yes.
In particular.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges is of course the housing crisis, and I think we'll get to that at a certain point. But universities aren't required to ensure that international students have access to housing, and I think that's one of the greatest challenges. I see students of mine. So I'm involved in a master's program where 40% of our students come from abroad every year. And, I see always in the first weeks, just people absolutely struggling because they don't have the support they need to find the housing that they deserve to have access to. So I think that there are significant gaps in the kinds of support structures that need to exist to enable our international students to live well in the Netherlands.
Yeah, no, definitely there's many gaps. I think I want to open it up also for the audience that are sitting here. There are also people online, and if you would like to ask questions through online, that is also possible if you go through menti.com and you use the code. I have to check my notes because it's a long number. It's on the screen, I think. No? Oh, 8894. Yeah, there it is. 9115. Yeah. But first of all, please, if anyone wants to ask any questions, I heard some interaction here, so there might be someone that has a question or a comment, perhaps. Please feel free. Yes? Can you you were going to get a mic so then we can all hear you well? Yes, thank you.
I had a question for you. I forgot your name, sorry, but from ESN, Sophia. You mentioned that you felt you didn't feel at home with the Dutch so much, but more with the expat community, right, or with international students. What do you think that Dutch people, or from a local perspective, what could they do to make you feel more at home? Like what? I don't know, like because when you work here or when you study here as an international, or you work here as an international, it's very easy to, just hang out in your expat bubble, obviously. But yeah, I was wondering how could the Dutch pay or be part of that, or play a role in that? Or maybe that's also for everyone, maybe not just to you, but I was triggered by your question, or by your... I think that's a very good question, and I've wondered whether it's too easy to just blame it, maybe on, they don't want to have anything to do with us anyways, because of course there's always an effort we as internationals can put into it, and as I said earlier, now I'm realizing maybe it is actually important for me to learn Dutch to fully fit in. I think maybe the first step is to maybe listen. Because for international students, there is a lot of problems. I mean, that's why we're here today, and there are a lot of barriers that the Dutch community might not be as aware of, or I know that, for example, doctor visits. A lot of my international friends call the doctor with like a severe problem and they're just being told off. And I think there's a stereotype of like, oh, internationals complain too quickly. Oh, there is no problem. Why are you running to the doctor? And my friend is sitting at home with an ear infection, like stuff coming out of her ears. And the doctor's like, oh, it's nothing. You're fine. So I think it's maybe just listen. But I've also heard it, we often say as internationals, oh, the Dutch community doesn't want to have anything to do with us. But I've heard some Dutch people also say, oh, you internationals don't want to have anything to do with us. So start having a conversation, start interacting, start listening to each other. And if an international person wants to learn Dutch, don't answer in English. Try to answer in Dutch, because it kind of it's not really encouraging to learn Dutch if no one is trying to help you out a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like Deon wants to go on this question as well to react. I think especially because there's a perspective, of course, of the international student that doesn't speak Dutch, but there's also the Dutch Caribbean students, which are kind of in this middle ground where they're international, but then they also speak Dutch. So they're kind of considered international, but also considered local, but not really either.
Exactly. I support your point. Yes, fully. And expanding on that, also, it's a very great question because coming from Dutch Caribbean nations, we also experience that we're not international students because we don't get the benefits, right? But at the same time, we don't get seen as Dutch because the Dutch don't, let's say this very simplified, most of the Dutch don't even know we exist, right? Most of the Dutch don't even know that there's a community, Dutch community in the Caribbean, right? That you can just fly to with your Dutch passport. And that the Dutch Caribbean, when they come to the Netherlands, they have a Dutch passport. They just don't have the BSN number, right? But when they're here, they're still separated from what is the Dutch community, right? And also the international community because they're not exactly international. So I really do support the point of having more conversations. And also, I do think that a very critical point is the books, especially the education in the beginning of the years, let's say, of kindergarten and high school. I would like to see a bit more about the islands, a bit more about the history, and that would bring a lot of recognition. And not only to say, yes, we come from this part and we want this and that. No, it's just that we are familiar or we can relate to the other person's feelings and their emotions and thus create or co-create.
Yeah, that's interesting because what I've seen in people that I know, at least the Caribbean students, they're often going more with, like you say, you choose to go with more the international club, the international students that you can kind of share that same experience with, whereas it's more difficult to connect with Dutch students that perhaps they're already used to living here, and so for them it's nothing.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. It's like I've learned this from the Dutch soort zoek soort. Right, sort can sort. So you feel it's like
type finds type or type seeks type. Yeah.
You would feel more comfortable with people that can relate easier to what you're going through, which makes it way easier to then go forward and have things to talk about, and not just why do you have a different accent if you're Dutch?
Yeah. No, 100%. Are there other questions from the? Yes, I have two. Can we bring the mics for? Yes. First here, yes.
Yeah, sure. I have a question for the people on the panel who have come as students, and also partly for Megan. When you came, what support was there? What sort of course was there? Like, an hour a week, welcome to Dutch culture, this is how it works, this is where you go to your doctor, and that kind of thing. Did you have anything like that also helped you find your feet here?
So I think you're directing to everyone, but we can go to whoever wants to. Yeah, you can go.
Yeah, I can do a quick one.
All right.
Students from the Dutch Caribbean, only when they have a loan from according to the corresponding island, they would have a type of support. Support would be a pickup from the airport, bringing them to a sleepover location one day. Second day, they would have to pay themselves. And they would go to IKEA, bank, phone, the gemeente, and sayonara. Only if you have a loan. If you come here by yourself, no,
Good luck.
there's nothing. Yes, good luck. Just try to find out the Dutch systems.
So that's the Dutch Caribbean
Yes.
experience. Who else wants to pick it up? Maybe you, Megan. She also directed it also to you.
Yeah, sure, I can say something. I came to the Netherlands 12 and a half years ago, and I was one of the first kind of internationals in my chair group in my department. And there was really nothing available for international staff at the time. We were given a handbook, quite a thick handbook for expats living in the Netherlands. And that was really our kind of Bible in order to make sense of how healthcare works, for example, which is completely different from most other countries in the world. These sorts of things were really essential, but there was nobody kind of holding our hands to support us. That's really different now, as international staff have increased in number over time, where they're a lot more supported, also with IND and things like that, but not when I first came, no.
That's
Yeah,
hilarious. Yes, go ahead. No, please.
I would like to add that I do hope that things are much better than 12 years ago when you first came to the Netherlands. But in my experience, I kind of did experience the same thing where we did have like an introductory like pick-up point of, they give us our campus cards and then they give us like our keys and, all the information of the bank account and IND and whatsoever. But there wasn't much of a follow-up, I would say. As an international student, there was the introductory week, but it wasn't really closely affiliated with the university. It was more of an external organization helping with it. And I think it was a really good thing to have like this introductory week, but it didn't really pinpoint the important things, I feel like, of the Dutch culture and how to blend in or how to interact with the Dutch community. And also another thing that I want to mention is that there's not much of a guideline for accessing like mental health resources, well-being resources. In the case for me, there wasn't a well-being center. It was just bits and pieces everywhere, so it wasn't much organized. And there are staff that are extremely, worried and extremely want to like take care of anyone who's struggling mentally. But I feel like there wasn't much of a follow-up in that sense of, look, if you're feeling this way, you can go to the GP, get a reference, and then maybe you can see if you can get external help. Yeah. So yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, no, thank you. It seems that that there is something that is organized, whether it's from the school or an outside organization of the university, but then no follow-up. And I even saw some people laughing because it must be very common that there's no follow-up then. But even when there is something, it seems like we're not, those international students don't get much of the institutional aspect of living here and the cultural aspect. It's more like, okay, this is what we have, or like have fun kind of, but if you run into problems, that's, yeah, good luck.
Just make it at your exams on time.
Exactly. It's very like, yeah, just make sure you get your grades. We will go deeper on the mental health aspect. I think that's a very important thing to touch, and also the housing, of course. But first, we just want to relax for a moment, and we will get a beautiful performance from Luis Bracamontes of Unwanted Words.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, my name is Luis, and this is the equivalent of the Super Bowl halftime show. But instead of Beyonce, it's me. And instead of music, it's just poetry. All right, so I share some of the experiences with some of the panelists. In the past 8 years, I've lived in 6 countries, 8 cities, 3 continents. So this process of starting over socially, culturally, adjusting, adapting, I'm very familiar with it. It's, of course, a challenge as much as it is a blessing, sometimes in disguise, too much in disguise. I believe we've been talking a lot about how to belong once you are in another space, but I find that sometimes the exchange experience, the immigrant experience, is not only what you find where you're going, but also what you leave behind and your relationship with the place where you come from. So it's both parts, these expectations of the people around you in your home country, your family, your friends, your own expectations of this experience, and on the other side, what's awaiting once you reach your location. So I'm going to perform two pieces that reflect this binary of experiences. The first piece is titled, Allow Yourself to Be Forgotten. Allow yourself to be forgotten, to be invisible, no footprints on the ground. You have nothing to prove, no one to impress. Yet, here you are, chasing comets that you may never truly catch. Your eternal quest to please everybody is just that, a never-ending task. And where would you end up without all that applause? Forget the need to become the prophet in your own land. Your voice won't stand a chance. Do this for yourself. Become a legend in your own life. And sculpt landmarks with the ashes of your regrets only you would understand. Allow yourself to be forgotten, because anonymity is freedom. Validation is the cage. Allow yourself to start over and become a new version of yourself you'd never thought you'd be. Thank you. Now, for this second piece, I hope I don't get deported. It's called From the IND with Love. In this country, everybody is welcome. Maar waarom ben je hier? Why are you here? First question that comes to mind when you're a newcomer in strange lands. Faced with endless lists and bullet points to track and measure their demands, just to prove you are worthy enough to come here with your dirty, empty hands. But, as I was saying, in this country, everybody is welcome. Maar, ben je goed genoeg? Are you good enough? Tell me what you are. Are you an immigrant, an exchange student, a refugee, a spouse, or maybe an expat? Ah, what a funny word. Isn't that what white immigrants call themselves, just to tell other people that they are different? To say they're the good ones? The desirable kind? Tell me, is that goed genoeg? Well, in this country, everybody can be themselves. Just not too much. Just not that way. Just not so loud, just not that proud, okay? Remember who is in charge. Remember who allows you to live this large. So, waar kom je vandaan? Where do you fucking come from anyway? The quicksands, I answer. That's where I was born. Or do you want more details to spice up this inspirational porn? Do you want me to point that on the map so you can see if you guessed it wrong? Tell me. Oh, yeah. In this country, everybody is welcome. Homemade propaganda loaded with lies. We don't buy that. We don't need to play this game to know what losing feels like. When you're bombarded by the disappointments of society, you learn how the world sees you in reality. Dan, waarom ben je hier gekomen? And why have you come here? Simple. I wanted to imagine a version of myself trauma-free, fear-free, guilt-free. The opportunity to exist with pride, to not have to hide, to take back that freedom that was mine. Because when you live your life as a punchline, it is dangerously easy to engineer smallness within you. It's dangerously easy to erase and mute what makes you be you. For what else is out there but other flavors of oppression? So you turn to brainwashing yourself to continue on a leash with these questions. Goed. Je bent niet zoals die anderen. You are not like the others. And that's what they like. Because they want it diverse just when it leaves no traces. They love ethnic cultures from non-ethnic faces. They would sympathize but never switch places. And so we learned that what they were saying all along was incomplete. They just never admitted they're just too discreet. Because in this country, everybody is welcome. Just remember to not overstay your welcome. From the IND, with love. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow, that was a trip. Wow, lot to think about. Thanks to your spoken word. Yes, thank you.
I'll bring you back. Don't worry about it.
No. So we wanted to go on this topic of mental health, because of course this is one of the most important topics I feel within the international community. We were talking about barriers previously. So Sungju, you were saying about how there's no there's not a lot of information about how to get to these institutions where you can get the mental health, or they don't really exist, or they're kind of isolated. Are there any other barriers you have experienced, or people you know have experienced? What do you see that hold back people from confronting the mental health problems? Oh, can we unmute her? Or can you unmute yourself? I'm not sure who's muted, but someone's muted. No, we cannot hear. Can we try to fix it? Thank you, technical people. No, we still cannot hear.
We can try to lip sync. Anyone? And can anyone read lips?
Oh,
no?
Please step up if you can interpret. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this question then. Actually, I believe there was someone in the audience that had a question. Yeah. Unless they don't want to come forward anymore. Yes. I didn't forget you. Huh? You thought I forgot you. No. I just wanted to get to the poetry. That's why. I can give you my mic. It's okay. Yeah. Let's not burden the technical people.
Well, it's a bit already about the topic we talked about, but I was wondering because I studied abroad in Spain and I experienced there the same, that you do not really get that easy into that Spanish community. So I was wondering if it's really like a Dutch culture thing that you all experience, or that it also happens in other cultures, or that you have another experience in other countries where it's better organized? Or that was my question.
Thank you.
I think I agree with you. It's like a universal thing. I think it doesn't matter what country you go to, you will face the same problems. I personally, I'm from Germany, so I know that international students in Munich, where I'm from, are also not as easily integrated in the German culture. I think for me, what the difference is, you have Dutch universities advertising for internationals, and Dutch universities really trying to recruit internationals, which you don't have as much in other countries. I think Portugal right now is trying to get a lot more international students. But I think that is the bigger problem, is you have people flying out. I know my friend, she said they had people flying out to Dubai to her school to recruit people for the universities. So you have that big recruitment, and then once we're here, what now? There's not much help afterwards.
Yeah, that's interesting, because then it seems to be we're attracting, I will get to your question, we were attracting we want the students to come, but then whose responsibility is it to make sure that they get a good, let's say, experience once they're here? Yeah.
In a way, you're selling a toy without a manual.
I like that. Yeah.
We have another question right behind the person that just asked. We will try to go back to Sunju.
Yeah, thanks. I just have a small comment related to this problem. So I'm also an international student from Germany, and my experience was when I applied for university here, I saw on the websites how they were advertising, oh, we have this amount of international students. When you come here, courses will be in English. It really felt like they were trying to get me come. I came, I was really excited, and when I was talking to fellow students who were Dutch, I've had several discussions about how annoying it is for Dutch students to have international fellow students. And another example, as an international student, even if you're from the EU, you don't get the same like privileges as the Dutch students, like free public transportation. And this is something you would, as far as I know, as an international student in Germany, you would have the same privileges. So this is something I like to talk about and maybe also complain a little bit about, because in my opinion that's unfair. But if you talk to a Dutch person about this, you will encounter closed ears, or so it feels a bit like okay, you should come, but you have to live with what you get.
I want to give you a big applause for that complaint, and it's a very valid one, definitely. Moving through the different institutions, and especially the Dutch government and the Caribbean government, indeed, you could experience that. You want to be brought, or you get indoctrinated to become an international student and come to the Netherlands. But then as soon as that happens, you get thrown to the wolves, and whose responsibility should it be? I would like to counter with that complaint, right? Like this is something that I would like to pinpoint. Like whose responsibility is it, right?
Yeah, and the person that asked the question, thank you so much, also raises an interesting issue where technically you're not allowed to discriminate between European students or European people in general, when there's freedom of movement, and that entails that you cannot say, oh, our people we will treat like this, and then the German people, the Portuguese people, whatever, within European law, let's say, that there's no space for that actually, but seems like they're still getting away with it.
Sorry, I wanted to add to that. It changes perspective immediately when you're talking to someone that has been abroad, that has studied abroad. Before that, indeed, you could say the general consensus is very offstandish, but as soon as they've experienced it, and you can say it by either way, coming and going. When you're talking to someone that has studied abroad, whole different perspective. We get you, we understand. It's been like that when I came here by ship, because there were no airplanes, and it's still nothing really being done.
Yeah. no, it's very interesting.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. So now it's a great time.
Perfect.
We will come to your question. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add on. So in terms of who is responsible for this, right? This kind of segregation and discrimination, I feel like it's a very complex question because it could be from a societal level, or it could be, you know, in the historical level of, you know, this is where it comes from, is deeply rooted, or it could also be more like an overarching institutional problem. And I feel like a lot of the times when universities are advertising for international students to come, it's very commercialized. You know, surface level, it's something that they want, you know, they want people to see that, hey, look, we're bringing diversity. We're actually doing what, you know, the world wants to see us do. But in fact, they don't really take the responsibility of taking care of the students. And yeah, it's really also with the public transportation. That's also something else that you could see, right? Does the government provide enough support for these international students? Or is it more of just, yes, you're here for the image of diversity, but whatever you're dealing with, you got to deal it yourself because we're not going to take care of you. So yeah, I think it's a very complex question when it comes to whose responsibility is it.
Yeah, no, you bring a good point about, yes, please, Megan, if you would like to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, part of this is the fact that, you know, within the last 10 years, the Dutch government has gone about promoting Dutch higher education as being, you know, as international, right? It's been a very specific kind of branding strategy, an economic strategy to develop the country as a knowledge economy, right? So international students, international staff are part of that branding strategy, part of that economic strategy. And so, you know, that's where that comes from, right? And I think it's important to take that into account, that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, proclamations about the value of the international classroom, the value of international students. And I think that in most everyone's heart of hearts, they really do believe this, right? That international students bring so much to our classrooms, and this is so true, right? But when it comes down to it, the foundation of this was an economic strategy, right? And this is part of this, you know, question now of the possibility of pulling back in the recruitment of international students, right? That's what the government's in the process of trying to do right now, to examine how to reevaluate the recruitment of international students. When we think about it in those terms, I think it helps us understand a little bit better how we fit and what are expectations of us within that scheme.
Yeah, that's a very important point to make, I think, that this whole situation was brought on because, oh, okay, we want to have a certain image, and why do we want this image? Because it's good for our pockets, for the economy of the country, of course. And what you say is completely true, that in that system, I guess, never the consideration of, oh, how are the resources going to be allocated so that we help these students with their well-being, their belonging, wasn't really much of a thought, I guess, since it was never part of it. Please add on to your...
I wouldn't say that hasn't been a consideration. So I think from the university sides, and every university has its own policy, right? So internationalization policy was developed
separate from the government
across the country by 2018, and then every university had its own policy, and every university has its own way of supporting international students. So it's kind of difficult to make claims about the Netherlands overall. And I think that there are different kinds of programs and services that are available in different universities. Some try quite extensively to support the international student populations. But of course, there can always be more done, you know. And I think, you know, especially with regards to supporting mental health issues, especially in the time of COVID and after COVID, and also in terms of recognizing international students, not just as, you know, diversity in the classroom, right? Or kind of representing, you know, the multi-culti sort of, yay, this is great, kind of stuff, but really learning from our international students. And fostering real interaction between students who were born and raised in the Netherlands and those who come from abroad. That's work that has to continue to be done within the university, outside of the university, by university staff as well.
Yes, yes, no, definitely. I think what's also interesting in this is, of course, we don't. The discussion shouldn't only just be about the problems, but also how we seek to find solutions. And I'm very interested in what you think could be solutions for these kinds of problems that are quite structural, like Sungju mentioned. And it's a bit complicated to say, oh, whose responsibility is it? But at the end of the day, how can, instead of this complaining kind of mindset, you can also be proactive and try to go on a positive level and try to effect change
with money. Because if you're attracting or trying to attract students, international students, to then better or solidify or develop your economy, what funding is being put into that same trajectory or that same journey? So at the same time, from what Megan has just said, that the universities, a lot of them are pulling back the propaganda of bringing students, but still, if they're coming here, they have all the information that they need to come here. But for the rest, the schools don't have, or the universities don't have funding to do anything. Or how many millions has there been released by the Dutch government in the last, I don't know, 4 years, specifically catering to international students, and also Europa funds.
European funds.
Yeah, the European funds. I don't know. Maybe let's throw a rough number here. Maybe 50 million euros. Not more than that. I can assure you. So if we're bringing economy, what are we putting into driving it, into sustaining it? That's my challenge thought on here, and we're talking back or bringing it back to responsibility. If you're selling a toy without a manual, how about you R&D and put funds and resources in your manual, in how you help the students? If we know mental health or mental well-being and emotional well-being is now a very trending topic, so we have to do something about it, or we have to seem like we're doing something about it. But every school would have maybe 10 social worker?
Yeah. Not even.
Right? Anybody in the university right now could tell me how many social workers you have at this moment available to you?
I think at my university we have 5 psychologists.
And I don't know, let's estimate how many students your college would have?
35,000 or something?
Yeah. 35,000 and 5 psychologists.
So that's
20.
UvA is also very big, yes.
And how many students?
Yeah. So, yeah, one psychologist for 1,000 plus people.
Yeah. 6 years ago to 7 years ago till now, what has been done to develop mental health resources within the schools themselves? Anyone?
Yeah, I think what Megan brings is also important to acknowledge, because your 2 points, they interact, where the universities are trying their best, I think, with what they're given and with what funding they have. But there's only so much you can do. You say, 7 psychologists, 20 psychologists. That's as much as they can provide, and where they cannot, where else are they going to get money?
From the economy that you're building, you can have subsidies, which will then maybe help develop small little tech. I don't know. We're in tech and digitalization right now. We can lower the bar to mental health support. You have a lot of interns that study software development. I don't know. How about we start releasing some of the scriptsy? I call it the end research that you have to do. Your end paper. There's a lot. I bet you there's a lot of papers within the schools that can bring a lot of prosperity. We can start opening the vault. I don't know, throwing a solution out there in the pool. Anyone else?
I think also with mentioned housing a couple of times, and I think most of us have struggled with it at least once. Most of us more than once. And I think, talking also about what universities can do, I think it is too easy to attract all the international students and then tell them, oh, you've been accepted, but if you don't find housing, don't come. And I have had friends living in tents that then it started raining and they bought their expensive psychology books and they're all ruined by rain, right? Or people living in Tilburg, driving the car for class every single day. I think it's too easy to say, don't come if you don't find housing. I think there needs to be a cap on how many people you can accept as a university as well, considering the housing you have available in your city and surroundings.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the proposals that are coming to limit to give a legal basis for this possibility of limiting the students.
But then you have housing and it says no internationals.
Yeah.
So
I think the aspect of housing is quite difficult because this is a problem that has kind of piled on, and even with or without the problem of the international students finding housing, even for the locals it's difficult. So how do you even go about that to start to alleviate the problem for international students? I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys. Please give some answers. We have someone in the audience. If no one else has something to add, I would like to.
Well, I think one of the points you made. Sorry, I forgot your name. I suck at remembering names. Is the thing about equality. I think when it comes down to the situation where you don't have control in terms of like money or the economy, I think as Dutch people or Dutch students, or we should like also see the see international students as equal, and I don't think that happens. So not happens a lot or enough. So yeah.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. Housing and ×2 for equality. Definitely, just to be sure. Housing. What exists now for regulating the housing market?
It's a very neoliberal market where there's almost no regulation. So
yes, exactly. So you have the
what do you mean? The facility or
the
commissie?
No, like
commission?
The commission of the huurcommissie. Huurcommissie. Yeah, the huurcommissie. Yes, But students don't fall easily under aid that the commissions would give. And then what do we have? Nothing else. Nothing else. And there has been a lot of funding being put in different other aspects of this society that we can, I don't know, take a slice of the cake and put it into developing I don't know, associations, giving them funding where they can then track how the guidelines are being followed. And when somebody says no internationals, on what legal basis is this being done, for example? And rent prices and experiences like students being kicked out of houses and not having enough money to go to a lawyer, which housing owners know, so easily exploit. And then where do you go? Call mom and dad. Otherwise, hit a bar for a €2 on a Thursday. I don't know.
Yeah.
To your beer. Otherwise, there's nothing. So that's, I don't know. I would advocate for a solution in having an association that has, I don't know, a representative of every country. We have ambassadors. We can incorporate younger ambassadors, right, that are active and that want to make a change for the better, and have them in association from each country, and see that the information is being catered to in a transparent and integral way to the student from when they decide, I want to go to Amsterdam.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
There needs to be more holistic process there from the beginning till the end of attracting the student. I want to, however, go back to Songju, which you brought up a very important point, which I think is also connected with the housing, is how the institutions then function. If there's a barrier, how do you remove it? What was your experience like with housing? Was that also something very difficult, and were you able to?
It was extremely difficult, yes. And I think everyone, even Dutch students, but especially I would say international students, housing is impossible. It's a major crisis, honestly, happening in the Netherlands, and especially in Amsterdam, because everyone wants to be in the epicenter. Yeah, I also did have a lot of trouble because the problem is that there are no like associations. They're all private house owners. And that's why there's a lot of preferences, right? Where they say only working professionals. But I'm here to study to become a working professional. How am I supposed to meet that criteria? And with that, there's kind of this segregation between working professionals versus students. And I feel like a lot of students can kind of relate to the fact that you feel a bit like less worth it, if that makes sense. Like you have less right to stay here. And I think that's very much something that I did struggle with trying to find a place. I also did have a time where I was homeless for 3 months. You know, I was couch surfing and I was going to like hostel to hostel. And the thing is, having a house is such a fundamental need for anyone. And without that, you don't feel safe. And without that, all of your mental well being, physical well being, it just all collapse. And I feel like there needs to be regulations, like, is an actual urgent problem that is really, really kind of damaging a lot of students' health. Not even just students, just even expats or anyone else living in the Netherlands.
No, definitely. I see you knicking, like they say, Megan. Would you like to add on that?
No, I mean, I think everybody's, said it so far. It's housing is so fundamental, and we need to resolve this housing crisis in some form. But it's super, super complicated, and a lot of it has to do with the rights that renters have in the country that are much stronger than in other countries, for example, that make it very difficult for a landlord to kick somebody out. And so they're very selective. And one of the challenges is indeed, I think, as they noted, is that people have very limited understanding or ability to access the legal system. But this kind of discrimination is illegal. It's not legal for landlords to discriminate against people based on their geographical origin. It's just not. It's not okay for students who are making decisions about who they're going to live with to exclude internationals. That's also discrimination. And I think it's really important to address these questions of discrimination within broader society, but also within the realm of the university. I think we can do a lot more. And I think our international student groups can be potentially more vocal or work to have roles on boards, on councils, to advocate for their rights within these situations, so that people are more aware of what's going on.
Yes, definitely. I mean, so Sophia, you're also in one of these kinds of boards. Do you see that there's action being taken for addressing this problem? Do you also do lobbying, let's say, with the political sphere here in the Netherlands or with the universities themselves? Is that something that's happening?
So ESN, the Netherlands, actually has a great partnership manager who has managed to build a partnership with Airbnb, I believe. So I know that ESN, the Netherlands, is really trying to help out with that housing crisis. We're not really affiliated with any political parties. We stay away from politics. But ESN is trying, and I know that the president of ESN, the Netherlands, is actually talking to the municipalities as well about this housing problem, and that there needs to be more.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear there's not enough being done. But it seems like there's not a lot of let's say organizations like this that are advocating for the international student. So where is the voice of the international student being expressed in this whole problem? Personally, I haven't really seen it. I just see these articles. Do we have any questions from the audience? That
I actually have something to add.
Yes,
so basically, yeah, I'm an international student, and I don't understand why it's so hard to build like a campus for students. And I know there are already a couple of campuses for international students, or there's also help from the UVA for first years moving in, but they get an apartment for 1 year and that's it. And not everyone even gets access to, because there's like a limit. But so there's some like student housing, but a lot of them are like Dutch only, and the waiting list for it is insanely long because like people sign up when they're 18, and it like coming as an international student, I had no idea how bad the housing situation was. I definitely was not informed of it before, or yeah, maybe I could have done some research, but I also feel like it wasn't talked about much. And so it just becomes a situation where, so for example, after my first year, I got a studio in my first year provided by the university, but after that, the second year, I had to find my apartment on Facebook Marketplace, which sounds like the most ridiculous thing ever. And it turned out to kind of be a scam in the end. But like I lived there for like 8 months still, but because I had absolutely no other choice, and I didn't know the people I was living it with, and one of them was a bit crazy, let's say. But there were a lot of problems in the house, and people were not getting along. And it's really like, it's a heavy weight on your mental health when you come here to study, but you can't even be comfortable in your own house, and you're facing a lot of struggles, but you don't have the accessibility to move out or find another place when you need to. And I think this is like something that a lot of people struggle, is if you're not happy with where you live, you do not have another choice to go to. And I think that's something that could be solved if there were more student complexes and student houses that had short waiting lists for people to apply for. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I missed the question part of your question. It was more like a comment.
It was more of a comment,
Okay,
because
no,
I was thinking that, the Dutch government could have done a lot more regarding building student houses, and I don't understand why they didn't think of this ages ago, to be honest.
No, thank you.
Request.
Yes?
If we ever get a member of parliament to see this footage, then this is my request. Put in the law that we can use office buildings for at least 2 years contracts for students that are international. Let's start there.
I think with the current political situation, it's not this.
I don't take no for an answer.
Good one.
So we'll see. Let's and if we can talk about it, I don't know. I bet you there are people in the audience that are more than willing, and us also, to contribute and to co-create.
Yeah.
And the invitation can also be put in a paper, and hopefully it gets somewhere. But we can also extend it directly, and we can co-create, and we can develop, because we need it. We as people need it, especially as international students. I know for sure my heart could have enjoyed having a better journey.
Yeah.
But, at least from now on forward, we can do our best to make it better for other students and other people.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect, because I was just about to ask, well, we are going to wrap up now, and what is everyone's kind of takeaway, or if you have any advice or perspective on what we just talked about. I think we covered you. Sophia, yes.
I'm there. If you need my help, I'm there.
Awesome.
Just
awesome.
My addition to that. I think also talking about mental health, even if it's just one friend, find one good friend and hold on to them. And you don't have to be alone going through this. I think that is my takeaway from the last 4 years. Just community.
And doing initiative to make that community, like you mentioned earlier, right? Yeah. Thank you. Yes, we have one last question, I think, yes? Before we move on to the goodbye for the rest of the speakers.
It's just a comment. I feel like this has been really eye-opening. I also needed to kind of sit down with more internationals to kind of remind me that we're on this together. But I also wanted to take the time to kind of appreciate all the people who've really been there, all the Dutch people who've made me and I know my friends feel so welcome here, and also people from the university. Like I've had some professors, specifically Anita from Leiden University, I love you. She's been so sweet to all of us, and she's really made it her mission to make the educational system more welcoming to us. And all of our friends who've helped us learn a little bit of Dutch, thank you. We're trying, we're really trying. And I think also all of us internationals, we can also try a little bit harder with our Dutch. I think Sophia and I could try a little bit harder with our Dutch. So yeah, just shout out to everyone who's really been there, and all you Dutch guys have made us feel welcome. And there's a lot we can do and a lot that the Netherlands can do, but I think there's a lot of people who've done really good things for us as well. So thank you.
No, thank you. So it was a beautiful comment to end it. Yes, definitely. I mean, you know, in this whole process, we're talking a lot about systematic issues, and in that conversation, it's often lost also, or it can be lost that you don't talk about the beautiful individual experiences you've had of people that are working hard to make a difference, regardless of the institutional barriers or these grander problems. So I would like to then go to Megan. What is your advice to any prospective students that are coming into this situation, which is already pretty bad?
I think it's to build on the audience members' statements there. You know, we at university staff, we do care, but we're also sometimes not fully aware of the challenges that you're all facing. So please talk to us about what you're going through. If you're facing challenges with regard to mental health, if you're facing challenges with regard to housing, you know, there are some things that we can do and some things that we can't do as staff, but talk to us and we can try to help you find good resources and support. You're not alone. Yeah.
Thank you. And Sungju, also please give us your take on this. What the students could
Right.
approach. Yes.
Right. So for current students, but also prospective students, it's such a huge leap going from, you know, your home country or home city even, or hometown, to another city or another environment. It's a step where you're becoming independent, becoming an adult, new cultures, and it's a lot, you know, even having to cook for yourself, having to manage the bills, and having to manage your housing situation, and especially having to manage your own mental health. It's a lot. So I would say, more on like a personal note for everyone, be gentle on yourself, really take care of yourself, because it really isn't your thing to take blame. Like, you shouldn't take blame for how you're feeling. It's more, as we were talking, it's a systemic problem. And we are in this society, and there's not much that we can do about it, and we're definitely affected by it. So don't blame yourself for anything. And because I do, my podcast is around mental health, I also want to mention that if you feel any symptoms, like if you're feeling anxious, if you're having low moods, low motivation, don't push that away. Those are clear signposts that something is happening, and be more vocal about it. And I know how hard it is because of all the stigma around talking about mental health. But I mean, if you even see on my podcast, I have speakers who are very vocal about, you know, their OCD, their anxiety, their depression, and just so much more. Know that you're not alone. Don't take the blame if you're feeling that way. It's a lot for an individual to have to carry. So be gentle on yourself and really focus on taking care of yourself and getting the external support that you need.
Yes. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would like to finally thank the speakers that are here online, Megan and Sungju. Thank you so much for attending and for your valuable input into this. Thank you to the speakers that are present as well, Sophia, Deon. Thank you to the organization, actually, of this event, this program. Anna, thank you so much. The technical people that were able to solve the audio problem. And for the audience that is here, we can continue talking about this if you like after. Thank you so much for coming as well.
Thank you.